Hi, this is Dr. Rebecca Wood, and this is our Week 7 lecture. This week we will continue our study of A Midsummer Night's Dream as we are flitting through the forest and parsing the boisterous bard. Shakespeare's plays were meant to be performed, which is one of the main reasons that I've asked you all to also watch a film version of the play. His audience would have expected to be entertained by all of his plays, and the theater was only one option of many for entertainment, and most of the audience worked very hard for their money. Watching the play would have been easier than reading and analyzing the play, so we're going a little bit deeper than most of his audience would have. And the language also would have been more contemporary for the original audience than it is for us today. Now, there are visual clues, especially in the film version. As you're reading, there might be an illustrated version of the play that you could find that would give you some visual clues as well. But we can see the screenshots here from our film version, and you can see that the actors are bringing the words to life. The costumes, the casting of the parts, the physical gestures and actions of the actors, the settings, and the parts of the play emphasized and those left out or de-emphasized all help the audience to interpret the play. So you could see 10 different versions of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and each one would be different. Can you tell what each of these characters is feeling in these screenshots from the film version? And what does Theseus's palace symbolize? This is a question that you might want to ask yourself as you watch the film version, because of course the palace is not quite so much a palace as just a big, really nice house. And Duke Theseus has defeated the Amazons, a civilization of warrior women, and is marrying their queen Hippolyta. And so Duke Theseus tells Hermia, a young woman who is one of his subjects, that she must marry the man her father has chosen for her, because her father has brought the case before the Duke, or face either a death sentence or being sent to live a celibate life in a convent. So our play becomes, and still is during Acts 3 and 4, a concoction of the natural and the supernatural. And so we have 4 lovers. They don't all love each other in the same way, but they found themselves lost in the woods, and there's the moon and the bushes and the trees, and also there's a set of fairies. And so the character's world is ruled by tradition in Athens, worldly dukes, and the royal fairies. And which forces are more powerful? That's another question to ask yourself as you read and watch this play. And you will notice in this lecture that there are more questions than answers. And I believe that some of the very best literature asks questions that only you can answer. And your answers might well be different than my answers, and they might be different than your classmates' answers as well, which is one thing that makes Shakespeare and other great writers interesting. So as we look into Acts 3 and 4 and think about how this play could possibly end, why are there fairies in this play? They're not something we would normally see in our daily lives. And there have been lots of literary fairies. And so think about what they could possibly symbolize. There were 2 different English rulers during Shakespeare's career, Queen Elizabeth I and King James I, and many of his plays were performed at court. So he might actually have the king or queen at the play watching it, so he can't very well criticize anything that they've done outright. Queen Elizabeth's father was the notorious King Henry VIII, who married 6 times and whose first marriage led to England's break with the Catholic Church and the creation of the Church of England. So England went from staunchly Catholic to Protestant and also had their own church that the king invented, and there was a lot of bloody conflict over that switch. It didn't just switch smoothly. England didn't just go magically from the Catholic Church to Protestant Church overnight without bloodshed and other events. So there was a new church in England, and Henry VIII just happened to have executed Queen Elizabeth's mother, Anne Boleyn. So Queen Elizabeth I, who I said was queen during part of Shakespeare's career, actually had her mother beheaded. Fortunately, she was a child and probably did not remember that happening. So during the time that Shakespeare wrote his plays, directly criticizing the monarchy would have been quite dangerous. So maybe that's why there's fairy royalty instead of exactly real royalty, because after all, we had the Duke Theseus and not King Theseus. And also, why are there fairies, maybe? By 1592, Shakespeare had achieved some prominence and success as both an actor and a playwright, but his career was paused or interrupted when the theaters were closed because of the plague, a contagious epidemic disease that devastated the population of London. So unfortunately, there's a parallel with some things that are going on in the world currently. And Shakespeare resumed his theatrical career when theaters reopened in 1594. So there was maybe a 1 or 2 year delay there, or pause on theaters and plays. And the plague could have given Shakespeare and his audience reason to look to supernatural explanations for natural events and or the calamities that they had gone through with the plague during those times. Also, this play might make us think of order and disorder. Theseus and Hippolyta appear to be symbols of order, but at least in the film version, there are some hints, a little eye-rolling, a little hesitation on the part of Hippolyta, although near the end it looks like that has been resolved. And the fairies appear to be symbols of disorder, especially Puck, because he is, of course, a joker and he does things to kind of mix up the world and possibly mess things up. But are there positive outcomes from Oberon and Puck's love potion? Who is still under the influence of the love potion, for instance? And what would happen in a civilization without rules and rulers? But what would happen if everyone had to follow all of the rules all of the time? If that were the case, then Hermia would have had to marry Demetrius, whether she even liked him or not. Also, this play could make us think about the meaning of love. For instance, the love potion works so easily that suddenly we have Lysander doesn't love Hermia anymore, and he loves Helena, and then Helena doesn't take it seriously, and who loves whom and why. And so the concept of romantic love has changed over the centuries. There was a time when romantic love was actually reserved for affairs, and royalty and other upper class people married for practical reasons, and then they either romanticized or actually had relationships with each other's spouses, which is kind of a strange way to think about romantic love in our viewpoint, probably. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, several of the characters are given their wish to marry whom they choose, and this seems to be a good thing as the play ends in a triple wedding. However, that one character appears to remain bespelled. How long does the spell last? Does it last forever? And the lovers in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet came to a very different end because their young, impetuous love was considered akin to madness. So is romantic love a good thing or a dangerous thing, or possibly both? And then this is this week's works cited list for the lecture. We have the film version of Midsummer Night's Dream that I suggested watching. You may have watched a different version. And then we also have some material from the editorial sections of A Midsummer Night's Dream. So that's the works cited for this week. And I hope you all have a great week, and I'm looking forward to discussing this week's section of A Midsummer Night's Dream with you.